welcome back to our Fair Chance Conversation series. I'm Alex Love with Level Set and Alex Love Consulting.
And I'm Matt Joyce with Level Set and Envoy.
So we've talked at length on this series about strategies to recruit candidates with past convictions. And today we're going to talk about how to keep great talent through developing the tools and the culture to promote long-term retention and advancement.
That's right. We know from the research on fair chance hiring that candidates with past convictions have higher rates of retention, higher rates of advancement, but there's a lot that employers can do to encourage people to stay with the company. And Joe DeLoss, our guest today and the CEO of Hot Chicken Takeover in Ohio, has really led the way in ensuring that his employees are supported in their career paths. So Joe, welcome. Before we jump into retention strategies, tell us a little bit about the founding story of Hot Chicken Takeover.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt and Alex. Hot Chicken Takeover is, just the headline, we're a restaurant chain based out of Columbus, Ohio. We've got seven locations up now, about 175 team members, and we've been a Fair Chance employer from the start. But my journey as kind of a Fair Chance entrepreneur or founder goes back like 3 or 4 businesses before this, and just became really passionate about building work environments that are inclusive of folks that have been justice involved and believe it can make for a better business. And was really, as an entrepreneur, just looking for the next idea that I could become an employer again, and took a trip to Nashville, Tennessee, ate hot chicken, and felt like it was something absent in our market. And so learned how to fry chicken, and here we are. Our restaurants are split between Central Ohio and Columbus and Cleveland right now. And we've got more on the way, thankfully.
Great. Love hearing how all of that came together around chicken. We'd love to hear more about the culture and how it's driven by some of the values that you have.
Yeah, so Hot Chicken Takeover is a people-forward business. If you look at our logo, we have this asterisk on our logo, and that asterisk is really about like what's more to the story of this company. What's the bigger story than chicken? And for us, that's all about our people. And we think about our mission pretty simply. It's to create extraordinary experiences for extraordinary people, and believe that begins with our team as the primary stakeholder. And so culturally, the way that plays out is we have an environment that's just essentially believes that if we invest in somebody's personal stability, it will pay professional dividends. And so we try to be alongside of our employees as they move forward in their life and tackle big things, whether that's a barrier they've been up against that's prevented them from achieving something they've wanted to, or if it's moving into a career pathway and creating economic security for themselves. We just like to be alongside of their journey and do that as productively as we can as an employer. Probably important to note too, we're not a social service or a nonprofit. We're a for-profit business and restaurant chain that's privately funded and growing. And so, aside from personally believing this is the right way to run business, we're also demonstrating that it's a productive, meaningful business strategy that achieves really strong business outcomes, which I'm excited to talk about.
Joe, thanks. And it seems like as part of your values and your culture, you've kind of rethought employee benefits and rethought employee supports and taken what seems to be a very relevant and sort of non-traditional path to how to support employees, how to make sure you're providing them with a benefit package that's really meaningful to where they are. Can you share a little bit about kind of how you structure benefits and how you support folks through the onboarding and into the company?
Yeah, I think convention around employee benefits in a lot of environments, in corporate environments, is that they're there as something you have to have, but you don't really want people to use them because it costs a company money. And so we flip that a little bit to say we're going to design benefits that are hyper relevant and hyper necessary for our staff, because if they do engage with them, that will achieve stronger business outcomes and personal outcomes for our staff. And so As you can imagine, we're primarily an entry-level employer that's hiring people at entry-level wages in the food and beverage industry. And so the benefits we have are though we have things like 401ks and healthcare, we also orient a lot of benefits around just some of the volatility that many of our team members are experiencing when they begin employment. And so we have access to financial services through local credit unions to ensure that our team is bankable and has access to non-predatory financial instruments. Have partnerships with legal support for our team members that are navigating different legal instances, that whether it's around custody for children or a parole issue or whatever that might be. And similarly, just great things like cash advances and paid time off and flexible scheduling to accommodate, the needs our team members have. And so our approach is really listen to our staff. And if a team member shows up and says, hey, I need support with a bicycle repair because it's how I get to work, and we realize, man, that's a benefit that could be replicated with a lot of team members, then we go and build a more scalable, sustainable solution around that need. And so that's a textbook example. We have a partnership with a local bike chain to ensure that our staff can get really reliable, dependable bicycles for fitness and transportation, and at a very low cost. And that came up because a team member said, hey, I need my bike fixed.
Yeah. Having hired a lot of folks who are coming back from the justice system or have had involvement with the justice system, just curious if there are any of those benefits or of those supports that feel particularly relevant to people who are dealing with the collateral consequences of reentry, of supervision, as they start with you.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the benefits around financial access, banking, financial stability are very meaningful, often because in many cases our employees didn't have a foundation of understanding or access to those services, perhaps even before they were incarcerated. And so those particular benefits have been really helpful. The other thing I'd say, probably more generally about our benefits, is because we try to make those relevant to our team members, even things like just accommodating schedules and acknowledging that somebody's PO might call them and tell them they have to show up tomorrow or this afternoon. And so even just building a management team and a leadership team internally that is empathetic and understanding of those instances builds a lot of loyalty and retention as well.
I love the way that you and leadership are just thinking through benefits and just like being very intentional about that. We have a lot of conversations with leaders around job pathways and career advancement as an important aspect as it relates to long-term retention. What does advancement look like at Hot Chicken Takeover?
Yeah, I think it's a really informed question. The reality is career pathways and advancement opportunities are generally missing, or in our industry, but generally in a lot of entry-level industries. We find that our employees have really never had a positive job experience prior to joining our environment, and have always felt kind of a predatory relationship with their employer or their leaders. And so what we've tried to do is create not only a relevant benefits package, but a really clear set of expectations and responsibilities for our team to really empower them on a career pathway within our organization that becomes more of their responsibility than ours as a company. And so a really objective set of criteria for what compensation increases look like, what responsibility increases look like. And so maybe one quick anecdote I'd share about that is we don't hire anybody for specific positions. We hire everybody as what we call a crew one, literally the number one, and you're a brand new crew member. And everybody starts on our dish tank. Really, whether you're a crew member or our COO, everybody starts in those really important but early positions, and has an opportunity to grow from there with kind of a roadmap in front of them. And so what's become really empowering is being able to hand that over in a handbook to somebody, and particularly for somebody that's been justice involved and has not had the reins of their own future in many ways, to empower somebody with an opportunity to be in charge and to grow based on their own volition and performance is a really disruptive offer for somebody, and really excites a lot of our new team members.
Well, I would be remiss not to say that the chicken is delicious. You guys are growing for good reason. And I was curious, as you think about growth, as you think about going from 7 locations to 700 locations, just how you're thinking perhaps differently about talent strategy, or how you scale up sort of this ethos and this model you've built.
Yeah, well, we have an emphasis on culture and care for our team, and it is difficult to onboard people externally into that environment, into leadership. And so as we think about scale, we really believe the bottleneck for our scale, or the opportunity for scale, is really determined by how quickly we can build our bench of leaders internally. And so we're trying to grow at a pace that 75% of our leaders can be developed and promoted from within. And so that becomes kind of the gatekeeper for how fast we believe we can grow. We know we could go out and raise a lot of capital and go open 20 restaurants next year if we wanted to, or we could franchise and quickly blow out a ton of restaurants. But it's not in a sustainable way if we don't have the internal talent to do it. And so at this point, our orientation towards scale is, how do we build a scalable cultural model and training and development model? Because that will really be the gate for which will kind of open and close opportunity for us in terms of volume of restaurant units that we can get up and running.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love the thoughtfulness around the leadership development, and really thinking through how your internal leaders can really be a part of that growth. In general, what type of advice do you have for employers that are thinking about developing, proactive, best-in-class, fair chance initiatives?
I think my advice to employers that, we get a lot of inbound inquiries about this exact same question. And I think there's a lot of novelty wrapped up around this idea of being a fair chance employer, particularly with increasing initiatives around DEI and around inclusion and a staffing crisis. The amount of people that are saying, kind of seeing fair chance employment as this magic bullet, this silver bullet that's going to solve their X crisis. For me, my advice is generally around encouraging employers to be really thoughtful and compassionate to their workforce, regardless of who their workforce is, because that will create better business outcomes. And so, for us, what we know is, as a fair chance employer, there's a particular set of barriers that are in the way of our team members being successful generally in the community. And so we choose to offer relevant benefits and kind of empathetic policies around that particular target. But I think generally what we've found in common with a lot of other industry employers is that if you're hiring into entry positions, whether you're a fair chance employer or not, you're experiencing a workforce that has had a lot of volatility in their life. And so if you're not an employer that chooses to engage with that volatility and see it as a business responsibility to increase personal stability of your workforce, I think you're going to continue to have this problem burning and churning through, versus, in our case, even as a kind of an emerging, growing brand, we're seeing retention numbers that are about 3 times better than our industry. And so our turnover is usually around 40% on an annualized basis, with many employers in our industry reporting about 150%. And so it's working. It takes an investment, but it's paying significant business dividends, as well as just it's a fun place to be. Our team is better than most teams, and it's an enjoyable place to work, and that makes it just makes the work a lot more interesting to have such a positive culture and affirmational culture.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yeah, I can attest, having been in the stores, that just the environment and the frequency there, it is fun. And I can just tell by the energy of the folks that are there, it's just different, and it's a different place to work. And I love that you brought in talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how it's really important to really have this broad culture around inclusion, and then specifically thinking about how can we build support and benefits to serve this particular population that needs that greater equity. Thank you so much for your time. We've loved this conversation. We talk about Hot Chicken Takeover as much as we can, and are looking forward to future conversations. Thank you.